So this, I'm sure you all saw the description. I was saying this before, but I do not have any real direct experience with Next. I've been doing React for I don't know how long, but a while, and I've been wanting to try it for a while, and I've been like wanted to kind of just this seemed like a good spot to do it, and I thought, oh, maybe it would just be a fun event, and we can kind of get 2021 started and kind of do some cool stuff. The plan here is like fairly simple, hopefully. So I'm gonna start sharing here, and we're going to turn on the UI for, I don't know if they changed it, but the UI for like the Mac OS Do Not Disturb just confuses me every time, because it's like, is it on? It says always on, and does that mean notifications are on, or does that mean that I'm not going to get notifications? What does it mean? All right, here we go. So can everybody, let me see my screen okay so far? Yeah, okay. So I'm at least sharing. I'll get I'll get some stuff zoomed up a little bit once we kind of get settled here. All right, so here's our event. And here's this issue that I wrote. And so I just threw a couple like kind of notes in here, but we're gonna try to replicate the first step. The first pass will be just kind of replicating the functionality of the Cleveland React site. So this is the Gatsby site as it exists right now. Right now it's a single pager. So this is some about content, and then I guess it's not a single pager anymore. I'm sorry, because the code of conduct is a separate page, but we can kind of straighten that out. And then Gatsby is at build time hitting the Meetup API and grabbing upcoming events, and then the past events. And I think it's limiting it to some amount. And then the more events just links straight to Meetup. And this is all coming straight from all this content is coming straight from the the Meetup API. So I thought that we would sort of refresh the design. I don't know if anybody has seen Tailwind UI, but it is pretty cool. And there's some components that we can just kind of steal. I mean, not steal, right? Because I paid for it and everything a while ago, but like we can just kind of use there's some, I don't know, we can get, we'll get there. We'll do it little bits at a time. And what else? What did I say? Refresh design. Hosting and Netlify. Yeah. So like with Next, Next has some, pre-built stuff, and it has some more back-endy node-based stuff. And traditionally, Vercel is the company that made Next, and they do hosting too. But we're sort of already on. Let me just get the Next.js site up here. We're already on Netlify, and Netlify actually has a plugin that will allow us to sort of use some of the fancier Next stuff on Netlify without any real extra work. So if I was starting from scratch, I might consider using Vercel for hosting, but we already have like a nice setup on Netlify, and we have a like an open source. We basically have the pro plan, but for free, since we're an open source community, and that was like, sort of a special thing from them. So I'm gonna kind of stick there for right now. So and also all of this is on, I mean, there's not much on there right now, but I did push up the like where we're starting from in a pull request here. So I'll put this in the chat. Maybe. Let me see.
I found it amusing that in the pull request, it says it can't be merged because there are two yarn.lock files that are conflicting, because it's just the yarn.lock files always conflict, don't they?
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, I didn't even bother. Like, I just deleted it. And I mean, I deleted to start, I deleted the yarn log file and then just like created a new one, just knowing that there was going to be conflict, and that I didn't care, you know. All right, here we go. I'm trying to remind myself how to get to the chat when I'm sharing, because wait, more chat. There we go. All right, so here's the PR. So I did a little bit of just a little bit of preparation to get going, mostly so that I didn't have to run yarn install while streaming, which is just always a mistake. In my experience, just it just slows everything down, and you know, it's not that fun for you guys to watch everything happen very slowly. So here's what I did to start. I installed Next and some Tailwind stuff. This ESLint stuff I actually forgot to look at. This is still like from our old version, so we might have to, I don't know, we'll take a look at that if we need to. But I really added, you know, so upgraded React, added Tailwind and some Tailwind related stuff, and Next, right? And that's basically it. The Next starter basically comes with an index page and then a couple of these special pages. So, or special files, I'm sorry. And then I threw in a call to the Meetup API just so I could make sure it was working before our meetup. So, because I was a little worried about that. And it is, at least from what I can tell so far. So yeah, so Netlify is, I'm sorry, Next, where is my Next docs? So Next is, I'm not really going to come at this from a converting from Gatsby view, because Gatsby's got like its own sort of special way to do pretty much everything. My plan here was just to more think of this as like sort of starting from scratch, right? So Netlify has, I'm sorry, I'm going to do that all night. Next has is a framework built on top of React, and it has a couple cool things that just make some of your life very easy, right? So its first feature is called Pages, right? And so you can, they have a directory called Pages, and anything you put in there basically becomes a page on the front end after you build it. And then we can do, they can do dynamic routes and things like that. I'm going to get into the rest of this in a minute, but in our case, right now, we only have this index .js file, which means this is just like the index page, right? This app, yeah, I'm sorry, let me zoom this in. I meant to zoom this a little bit more. Maybe not that big. The app is something that I actually haven't figured out what it does yet. And then the document is one where we can do things like stick in our fonts, or if you had a Google font or whatever. I'm sure there's lots of other things we can do here too. But then everything else, you know, is inside this pages. So here's our index page. If we wanted to add some kind of, you know, test page, we probably could do it pretty easily. So we need to just export default. So whatever your default, your default export is, it will kind of use header, footer. I don't know, here's some stuff. I didn't actually run through what this was, nor do I really have a plan for this. I just wanted to see if it's going to work. Okay, so head is a next special next thing that like is literally your HTML head element. So I'm pretty sure anything you stick in here, it will automatically get dumped into your head. And then the rest of this is just HTML. So I'm just going to stick in let's see here, return a div and see if this does anything. This, right? And using this, we don't need to import React anymore with React 17. So theoretically, this will work. And so what I have is, does this work? Let's find out. Yeah, it works. All right, right here. Here's our div. All right, so we have a page named test. Like this is at test, right? And that's all we had to do, right? Obviously, this is very simple and is doing nothing, but you can kind of see where we're going here. So we can have folders in here, and they will like match the folders. So we can say like, I don't know. Well, I don't know if renaming works inline, but we can say I don't know, test2 and move this in here and so instead of being here, this will be test2 test2/test, and there we go. And then Next has a link element that's built in that will allow us to let's see where we can import it from. But so this routing happens in the, from what I understand, in the build step, and then it'll route like a React app, like a create React app with router built in, once you're on the client side. So let me see what link looks like here. Next link. So link is their thing. So instead of like using just an A tag, what we do here is use their next one, and it will do what we need it to do. So it'll like sort of act like we expect link to work, except that it does all of its fancy stuff. Test, right? So this is on our index page that I made, so we can just sort of see if this works how we hope. Oh, right, I didn't actually import it. All right, and you guys are gonna help me with the chat because the document wraps every page. Yes, document wraps every page. It's the app that I don't understand. Like, what is the difference between the app and document?
I think it's
Because
backwards. So the app wraps all the page components.
Yeah,
and then
sorry,
the
I got that
document
confused.
lets you say like the body and HTML tags is what the document does. The app is just like global state almost if you want to use it.
so is the app above the document in the tree?
No, the
Yeah, I think
document, I
so.
believe, is first.
I mean, that component that you see returned from app there is your like index.js or your test.js. Like that's what that component is.
So like, yeah, okay.
So like
So
if you want to do authentication, this is how I know it. Is we have a Next app where I work, and we do authentication by passing down page props via the app.
okay, nice. Okay, cool. Well, I mean, that is helpful. I don't like this, like the app one. The the app and the index came with the starter. I added the document because I wanted that font file. That's the only reason I did it. But I don't think we're like, hopefully we won't need to do anything super, super fancy with that.
Yeah.
I can see here that they are importing their like global styles here. So that's probably a clue, that like pretty much just everything this is just like the top of the tree. But yeah, so let's see if we can get that. Oh, this is not that. Let's see if we can get that link working. I was going to say, I'll try to keep an eye on the comments, but like if anybody, feel free to just talk to, it's you're not gonna like bother me. And sometimes I get caught up and forget to look at the chat. Okay, so here's our test link, and this should, yeah, there we go. So it linked right to our test file. Okay, so that's like sort of very easy, high level of pages. I'm just going to delete this, but the other thing here is the way that Next has built-in data fetching. So Next is built on top of React, so you can always do whatever client-side data fetching you're used to or you want, right? And it'll act the same way as every other React app, that is not fancy, right? It'll just like once the client loads, you can do data fetching as much as you want, but you're kind of losing a lot of the benefits of Next. And so what Next exposes is a few different a few different ways to do data fetching where you can do them at build time, which means if if you're not used to this sort of build timey kind of thing, is you basically run a build command, or your your CI server runs the build command, but that it does these functions on the server, like on the build server, and then exports a bunch of stuff, so that when the user reaches your page, like a lot of these API calls are already done. That's how Gatsby was working too, for especially for our site, right? So this this API call to get these meetup events happened when we last ran build on this page. It doesn't happen on the client side. So when a user hits this page at clevelandreact.com or clereact.dev, there's no there's no fetches happening or anything like that. It's already built in. So Next, where did our Next thing go here? So Next has a couple different built-in functions to help us, and these are functions that we add to any of those pages, right? So Git Static Props. What this does is basically it just exposes a function that runs in Node, and you can send any props you want to your page component, and it will give you some information about the page you're on. So if it's a dynamic route, it'll give you what the ID is and things like that. There's some more sort of fancier stuff that we're not going to worry about right now. And it returns some things too. so here's their basic example where they're basically making a fetch call, right? And then if we can't find the data, then we're telling Next this not found basically tells Next to say this is a 404, right? It returns a not found page. And if it doesn't, then we can set those props to anything. So we can see here, what I did here was I kind of did this step, or at least the first step of this step here on our index page. So we're having Git Static Props is this function that's built into Next. And this is just like a normal couple of fetch calls. We have the I'm doing two because the meetup API and the way we want to display them, when we have more than one upcoming event, we basically want the upcoming events, like I want the first one first, right? Like the most, like I want this order to be different than the past events order, right? So if like we had an event today, an event next week, I would want the first one to see is the one from today, right? And the one after that to be the one on March 11th or whatever. But then the past events, I want the most recent past events, and then down. So I know that, like, so it's like you could do it this way, or you could do it obviously make one big call and kind of sort them on this end, on our end. I don't know. I'm not. That's just kind of how we were doing it right then. So I was just figured I'd leave it that way. But so we can see here, this is sort of straightforward fetchy stuff, and then we're returning these props, right? And so I just figured meetups could be an object, and then we'd have upcoming and past. So, and then here's our actual component that this is mostly default stuff that they left in there. And then I console log meetups, which you can see right here. And so we are actually getting our data. This is like the data that comes from meetup. And we can kind of see that it's, that it's running so far. So I guess the next step is, well, so yes, so this is where I'm like, I was kind of waffling about what to do, because we do want our sort of index file, our index page to, I probably should just start, like, I should probably keep it simple, but the on the current page, the current site, right, all of the links go directly to Meetup, right? Not, they don't stay on our site. There's not like a page for this event on our site. So the next question is like, do we want to have specific, like, do I want to have like /events/ whatever, this thing and next, or some ID or whatever, or not. And it seems kind of like it would be kind of fun to at least get something going. So I think what I'm going to do here really quick is just output these in a list just so we can like know that they're working, you know. This header is just like I don't know, something from one of their things. Wait, what is header? Oh, it's just one of their built-in components. Oh yeah, so this is actually interesting, this alias thing. So this is a next feature that is JS config. So if you have directories that you know you're going to be referencing a lot, you can sort of alias them here. So it's kind of silly when you're on the same level. It doesn't like really seem like it helps that much, but when you're like up deep in directories or whatever, instead of doing you know this, you know, right, or this when you're when you're really deep, you can just always kind of do this alias, right? And then this header component was just something that they included in their I don't know, and it's just in H1. You can see they included in their base thing that I was probably going to be ditching pretty quickly, but it is the alias thing was kind of cool. I'm not sure if they call them aliases in next line or not, but how are we doing so far? Oh, there's a whole bunch of interesting ideas. Oh, Zapier. Send a post request. Automatically build the site when events get screwed. Yeah. So Jordan is suggesting using Zapier to rebuild the site when a new event gets created, which I do like. I'm not sure if it was set up right now, but we just kind of had a workflow going that like rebuilt the site every day, you know, and you know I mean, Meetup has like a pretty extensive API actually. Like, so I know that like we could get like really serious and, you know, kind of like really dig into it, but like that's not a bad idea because then, you know, that would make me want to do it anytime we edited it too, you know, like, right. So like rebuild the site anytime, you know. So this is like the I don't know if you want to call it a downside, but one like thing to consider when you're working with sites like this, where a lot of the data is pre-built, is that means the data is only fresh when it's built, right? You know, so I actually like I thought we had a workflow going, and when I looked recently, like the Cleveland React site had not run for like had not rebuilt for a long time. It had like it didn't even have like the most recent event we did, I think, last time I checked. So I mean, I just went and Notify and just hit build, you know, and it took care of it. But it's still something. It's definitely something to consider.
I mean, you have a good point too, though. You know, if you can get that workflow restarted, I imagine just building every day would be much simpler than, you know, setting up an account with Zapier and, you know, making sure it does the right post request. You know, so sometimes we like to over-engineer things, and just building it every day would probably be simpler.
Yeah, I mean, I like your use of the word sometimes there. It's, you know, maybe not the word I would use, maybe always, but I mean, personally, this is me personally, but yeah, it's like, I mean, I don't know, there's always a million ways to do everything, you know, and we can get pretty fancy, we can get pretty simple, you know.
Dynamic URLs and Next, couldn't you just build it once and then, you know, have the dynamic URL be interpreted as like an event ID? You would always just fetch all the events on the index page.
Wait, say that again, I'm sorry.
So you could do like events directory and then like :id.js, right? Or I mean, square brackets id.js.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the main page, you could just every page load server side, grab all the meetup events, and then they could each have their own page based on that dynamic URL in the events folder. Does that make sense?
So
Oh yeah, okay. So you're saying like
once and it would work forever.
Create create an individual file for each event.
Well, you would just make one file that would be like, have you seen the documentation, the dynamic URLs?
Well,
yeah.
So I think the thing that you're missing is with Next, there's no like server. It's you render everything once, and then it's just a static site.
No, with Next there is a server. That's why there's Git server side props.
Well, there can be a server, but with
Oh,
Netlify,
with Netlify, there's no server.
yeah, there's no server
That's
there.
the trouble. Never mind.
Well,
I
so
think you can do a server with Vercel though.
yeah, actually, so well, for Vercel definitely, actually Netlify. So Netlify has functions, and they have an actual build plugin. Netlify wrote it for Next that will allow us to use the server side props. So that's an option, right? Is get so what let's see if I can just find it. So this is actually, so this section was actually interesting to me. So and I don't know, I haven't tried, like, this is one of the things is I'm not exactly sure how this works, right? But so with Git Static Props, you can basically it will, like, if it doesn't have it at build time, it will like show a, I don't know, not found, or I don't know, refreshing or something like that. And then the next time you hit it, it'll actually have gone and gotten it in the background and then saved it to the site, which is sort of interesting and something that I was considering. The other thing, like, so one thing with Next that, sorry, I keep like leaning back, and so like this is a situation with Next where like I wasn't sure exactly how to handle this, right? So if we wanted to do what you were saying with the pages, right? With so create, this is what we're talking about. Create events, and then what, I don't know, ID, right? Should we do ID, or I don't know, meetup ID, whatever. So what this does is allow, so this is like a dynamic route. Can people see this? I can zoom this up. If somebody just type in the chat if people need me to bump the size of this. But what this does is like tells Next that this is going to be not the same thing every time, right? And it will take, this is just like, well, any other kind of routing, right? It's just like, this is a parameter now called ID that will get like passed in, and we can tell Next to say, okay, I mean, like, if we don't find it immediately, throw a 404, we can tell Next to say, we'll take anything. There's a bunch of different ways to handle this. So the way that we will end up doing this is, let me find a good example of one of these, but we're going to use basically the same dynamic routes, and we use the same, let me see if I can find this here. Catch all routes, log, whatever. The what am I looking for? I'm looking for Git static routes, right? Routes, props. What is it?
Git server side props is the where you would do the fetching. I don't know. You said Netflix.
Pages. Git something about pages. I can't remember what it's called. I was just looking at it. There's a way to like generate these pages, right? Like not server side, but generate them build side. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, Git static paths. This is what it is. Okay. So inside one of our dynamic routes, basically we can do a call to an API if we want, and then just allow different params, and then say, okay, if we haven't found one, then here's a good example. All right, so here's what they're doing, right? So this is called Git static paths. This is inside a page called, just like we have pretty much, right? So a dynamic route. This thing is the component that actually renders the page. This is the like magic that's happening here. Is they do a call to whatever API and get all their posts, right? And then what they need to do is return an array of array of paths that are allowed. And then if it doesn't match one of those, then if we say fallback is false, then it throws a 404. And then at build time, yeah, okay, cool. So what this is doing is like, it's handling, all right, so this file is handling every call to this pattern of URL, right? So every call to page, like to /post/ some number, whatever. This function is setting up the rules for this whole thing. And then this function, this get static props, is setting up how we get the data for a very for like one specific instance of this of this post, right? So we can actually kind of copy all of this right into our little thing here, except these are going to be meetups, right? So like event, right? So here we want to call, I wonder how we're going to have to be able to get, we're going to have to, I'm sure there's going to be some like nicer, easier ways to call this meetup API. All right, we want just all of them. Do you think, you think that works? Maybe. So what this function, we need to return an array of things that match the ID parameter, right? So if we want ours to be events / I don't know, the meetup ID. So this is the ID that's coming from meetup. So we might as well just like lean on that for right now. So assuming that this thing actually works and gets our meetups, then all we need to do really is do exactly what they're doing. We can just say meetup event so that we remember that this is a meetup, but this is an ID here. So we can just kind of lean on that. And let's see, meetups. Right. And fallback false means that we will get a 404 here. And then get static props. All we want to do is get the specific meetup event for our parameter. Okay. So, and this is like, I just know from screwing around with it this morning that like, this is how we get in this is the like URL for a specific meetup event. And it'll grab the one with this ID and let's say meetup so that we can be clear about our and what we got here, basic features, server-side rendering. Yeah. So like for sure I want to dig into server-side rendering, but I wanted to see if we can get this going first. So theoretically this will make a page for us for every meetup event we've ever had. So, but here, post name, right? So this is just very simple stuff, just to see if it works. So let's see. I mean, this is happening so fast that I can't actually tell if it's actually happening or not. Do you think it? I didn't have it scrolled down. I don't know if it worked or not. Fast refresh is done. All right, we're gonna assume that it worked. Let's just grab this ID because that's what we're using. So I called this events. So theoretically, events and then meetup ID should do something. Nope, can't read property something of whatever. Okay, so we're getting undefined in our post, which is, oh, I called it post, but I said meetup event. So that is actually very expected. Let's see what else we do. All right. Nothing returned from render. That's a return statement.
Are we identifying that right? Should it be?
I literally didn't. Oops. I literally didn't return the markup. I mean, there might be more problems, but like, if we want a React component to do anything, we do actually need to return something. Let's see if this works, and then there we go. Hey, it works. Okay, so, yeah, so let's go to our meetup. So here's like I don't know, here's today's. Let's see if it works. And you can see this sort of thinking and waiting when we're in dev. From what I understand, it's making these calls like when we hit them. It's not like I've run like the next dev command, so it's not pre-building everything. Theoretically, when we build it, all this stuff will be pre-compiled, and like this H1 will just be in the markup when you view source, etc. in the future. Once it's on production. Okay, is everybody with me so far? And does anybody have like questions? Does anybody have pointers, stuff we want to try out at this point? I'm thinking now that like we've got this going, and instead of like linking, so this is back to the home page, but instead of linking to the meetup, at least here, we'll probably I mean, I don't know how late we're all gonna get going here, but I am at this point probably not even going to try to do any styling at all, just to get some of our just basic functionality going. But at this point, we have the same sort of list. So we have meetups and what did I call it? Upcoming and past. So meetups upcoming, so we can just say an ally, and this is where we want our, do I still have a link? Yeah. All right, I do not remember what, is it 2? I don't remember what the href or xlink? Href, okay. So
Do the
this
links preserve state? Is that the upside of using a link?
I think so. I mean, yeah, I mean, like if it was just if we just had a normal link, it would be a full page refresh.
Okay.
I think, I mean, like, I'm pretty sure that that's right. And so when you're inside the like next, link situation, then it's preserving state, it's preserving like render. It's not going to re-render or remount, everything. If we were, I don't know, I'm sure there's like a lot more details to that too. That is honestly, that is mostly guesswork based on how like React router links work, which I have used a bunch. React router links, so if you were linking from inside a section from page to page, but only like a small part of your section changed, if we had a whole bunch of cool stuff going on in the document, for instance, it wouldn't even change the whole rest of it, only the part that would change, for instance. I don't know. So that's at least how React router does it. And I assume that Next has some similar situation, but since Next, the other side of this is that since Next pre-renders all this stuff, when you view source here, like on the build one, this will actually be a straight up link to the next page, in an A tag, and not like a weird JavaScript thing, So like Google can follow, like bots can follow them and things like that. Event. So what do we have? Meetup.id, right? And that should be that. And then I think, well, how they have it, they actually have just, this is weird. Like I haven't seen, I mean, not weird, bad. It's just, it is sort of weird. Can you put anything in there? Href as, well, there's a bunch of plays. Wait, sorry, I'm just, I was just reading this. if the child is a custom component that wraps an A tag, oh, so you have to do some special stuff if you got like a weird one. Yeah, whatever. We're just going to use regular links for now. So we'll do meetup.name. And hopefully Prettier's, yep, Prettier's going. Oh, we probably need some sort of key here, right? All right, and then we can do the same thing for our past events. So we'll do past. That'd be the same thing. I'm sure we can abstract this, over engineer it some more later. So let's see how we're doing. Yeah, nice. Oh, those. Yeah, I've got it. Oh, that's my header. Okay, so I put a. I don't even know what's happening here. I added Tailwind. I know that some. I added Tailwind without any real styles, and then I think that this came with a couple default ones, but it's like killing all of the. I think that's what Tailwind does. It's just like kills all the styles. But here it is. Okay, so here is today's event. Oh, events, right? Yeah, I called it events. What is all this? That was a while ago, so I'm gonna assume I fixed it. Yeah. All right, events. Yep, there we go. All right, cool. So that's working. Questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, heckles. All right, so what do we want to try? We were talking about server side. All right, explain to me again. Like, all right, so what should we try to do server side? You know, or you were talking about loading the events from the pages.
I was also at least curious to see how you were using Tailwind UI, like if the styles are getting processed and built like as part of your whole build thing, or if that was like a separate command, like how that's hooked up.
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember exactly what I ended up doing. What I think I did was something like Google Tailwind and Next. And then they have a guide. All right, so let's see what they say here. Okay, yeah. So what I ended up doing was, so I don't know how familiar everybody is with Tailwind, but it can be like there, it does some weird things. But one of the things it does is adds these custom directives to CSS files. So like if your main thing is a CSS like process, then you can add these, and then post CSS is a sort of a package that will do some processing on post CSS, and the Tailwind has a plugin that does some stuff like that for you. So like there's some stuff that's all tied together. Tailwind has its own config, and then so at build time there's also some purge things. So what purge does is basically we'll go through all of our React, Java, you know, or whatever we tell it to do. Right now it's doing our pages and our components and finding any class names, and then like removing literally every other class name from the from the like built CSS besides the ones that I found. And it works really well. So this only happens at build. So in development, we have like all of our Tailwind styles are just like hanging out in our you know, dev browser. So we can do, I don't know, let's see if this is working, but oh well, that's the other thing is I'm not like a Tailwind expert yet. Is it block? I don't remember what these are. No, that's not it. I usually just guess
It's just
like
block, I think.
Is it just block?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if I had done it to the you were correct. Look at that block. So anyway, we can see the Tailwind is hanging out here. Tailwind UI is a man, my like, I don't know how I get it to stop doing that. My Zoom bar keeps like popping back up. I keep moving it away. Tailwind UI it has some like really nice pre-built things built on top of Tailwind. So I was considering trying to, adapt some of these. So maybe there's something we can do real quick for content team. I'm just trying to see if we can find like a links or CTA or something we can
If you
use
do
for our
Command
list.
K, you can do it like a quick search.
List. Sure. Nice.
Seems pretty relevant.
Yeah, right. All right, so what is this? Just like, okay, put whatever you want in here kind of deal. Simple with dividers. All right, cool. So there's nothing like really Next related with this, or even React related right now. I think that they are working on some native React components so that we can, so that they would just like have a list container component that we can just use. But until then, all we really have to do is do this, and then also obviously remember to change class to class name, which I don't really have a problem remembering on this end, but the times that I forget is when I copy React code and then paste it in somewhere else, and then I'm trying to figure out why things aren't working. And after an hour or two, I realized that I have just like class name everywhere in like PHP code or whatever. It's does not work that way. Class name. So and so there's like some there's some interesting things with Tailwind, like different approaches that you can take. What you're gonna end up seeing in development for a while is basically just pasting the same thing in a bunch of different places, stuff like that. Okay, so now we have our little dividers and things like that. So that's kind of cool. So do we want application UI, do you think? Or do I want like marketing? I probably should have picked some of this out. They have some like kind of nice looking like whole pages, but they are very like, there's a lot going on in all of them. So I didn't know if it was going to be really worth digging into. And I was trying to find something that just had a list of, maybe we should do events. See if that shows up events. No. I'm using that Command K now all the time though. Description list, maybe that'll be.
Yeah, Tailwind CSS and Tailwind UI documentation both have that shortcut.
I like it. I've seen that on other doc sites too, and it's like I I just always forget about it or forget what it is or whatever, and then every time I use it, I'm like, this is awesome. I'll use this forever. And then 2 days later, I'll be like, what was it? It's not Command F. And then if I can get into my brain. Well, yeah. So I mean, at this point, I don't know. I don't really have a strong plan of how long to go. We touched base on Tailwind a little bit. When Cameron and I were talking about this event, we thought it was possible that it would, be maybe a multi-event or just like sort of an ongoing thing. Well, obviously we weren't going to like get through the whole thing unless I did a bunch of it ahead of time, which isn't really that fun. So I think right now I'm going to stop and see if we have any questions, and then see if there's anything like small that we want to try to hit before we finish up, or if anybody has like suggestions or, I don't know, different directions like want to check out. I don't know, just kind of touch in with everyone hanging out. I haven't actually looked at the chat for a little bit. No, don't have anything new there. And so what was I going to try to do? Oh yeah. So the other thing that I had thought about was trying to attach information to these things. So we have like we have the, maybe we should just try to dump our, sorry, I was just gonna, where's our actual, okay, here we go. So I was talking about trying to add, you know, whatever other content down the line to our pages, and that was actually a spot where I didn't have a really good idea for how to do it in Next. So we have these IDs, so I suppose like we could just make a JSON file or something somewhere and you know, import it. But if, I don't know, I didn't know if anybody had any thoughts about that. I mean, we have the, I don't really want to make you know, a file for every single meetup event, you know. I don't like necessarily, because obviously that could be one way to do it. Instead of having ID here, we could just like literally create one for every single one, but then, and then like get the content. That seems not ideal. I was just gonna,
Is there a way to schedule, like I think Jordan recommended, like schedule a daily build so that the events would always be up to date?
yes, so we can do that with
Netlify.
actually GitHub workflows can do that for us.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like, here's, all right, so this is just in case anybody wants to see the this is all of
Yeah,
the dev
I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
Before, unless your like total intent is to schedule a daily build, so you refresh that. And excuse my ignorance about the whole thing, but why can't you? So Next has something called SWR, and I guess their team at Next built a React hook that fetches data automatically from the client side. And unless I'm missing something, it's called SWR. I can link in the chat. It says with SWR components, we'll get a stream of data updates constantly and automatically, and the UI will always be fast and reactive. And it's let me get the link here.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So I mean, I can find it.
Unless I'm totally misunderstanding something, because I was like looking at Circle CI to do your builds every day or something, but then I thought the whole point of Next.js was to allow, they had two options. They had server-side rendering, and then they had this SWR thing.
Right. So so SWR is client-side rendering, right? So the, I mean, it's fancy and nice, right? But it's still client-side. And so like it happens after you load the page, right? And so for instance, if you view source, the way we have it set up, the way we have our site set up right now, which obviously is very simple, but if we ran a build and did view source here, you would see this text on this page, right? And you would see this page even. And if we were doing client-side data fetching, when you hit this page, it would just be sort of some empty markup, and then the JavaScript would kind of go and load it later. And like SWR seems like really cool. Like if you're going to do client side, like this seems like, I mean, this is the first time I've seen it. So Aval, like, thank you for telling me about it and sharing it, because look, there's a lot of stuff to learn. But like that's the client side data fetching is sort of, I mean, you're always going to have to do it, not always, but for a dynamic enough site, you know, you're going to want to do client-side data fetching at some point. And so Next, when you're using Next with this, you kind of can hopefully combine them, right? But we are not doing server-side, and yet we're not doing server-side rendering either. What we're doing is build. What do they call? What do they refer to it as? Static generation, right? So this happens at build. So like the stuff that we're doing right now, this the Git Static Paths and Git Static Props. So all of this happens. So what we do here is, if we were going to publish this, I think they call it, what do they call it?
Hey, Dan, real quick, I have another
Yeah, yeah,
question.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Is it also like, I mean, I just assume this, I guess, but like to me, the benefit of this, the building it ahead of time statically, like static rendering is also like, I'm not relying on the API being available. I don't care how many times, like if a million people or if somebody like wants to hit my site a million times in a row, like it's not going to run a new fetch every single time. And since there's no need for people to publish any changes to my site via like interacting with it as a user of some sort, then there's no need for it to be able to like update in real time for them. So to me, it's just like a cleaner experience too, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yes, there's so on a site like ours, or I mean, blogs, things like that, where you're right, where there's not done like a lot of dynamic content, the more that you can do um ahead of time, the better, right? Because you have like the server stuff, right? You don't have to like worry about scaling really. You don't have to. There's a lot, and it's always fast too. That's the other side, right? And so speed is good for users and good for marketing. It's also good for Google Juice. It's just up until a point, and then eventually you're going to have to do like, I mean, for some apps, most apps, eventually you'll need to do some client side stuff. And so what Next can do is like hook all of that stuff together. And let me see what Build did here. In a way that makes some amount of sense, I think. So let me see what they said here. So I just ran a build. So I just ran their build script which is Next build. And it created some pages for us, 22 more paths, and some of this other stuff. I just wanted to see SSG automatically guarantee a static. Yeah. And I think this just went into the .next.
One thing to say about the build, maybe this will save someone the trouble that I had to face. Every time you run build, it does not delete the old build. That folder just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I won't even go into the problems that caused me one day, but it was rough. It was rough.
So, it doesn't clean it, you mean? Like,
yeah. So like if you build again, that will double in size.
oh, that is interesting.
Yeah. So .next just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you break something in production, and then you're trying to copy like 50 megs because you think that's the size of the build, but it's not. And it was rough. It was rough.
Well, thank you for that note, and I'll try to keep that in mind, because I mean that's the kind of thing that I don't know, you learn maybe probably the hard way lots of times.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's to the point where now we have a separate script that runs rm-rf.next before it runs build.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if anybody's used Eleventy before. What Eleventy is like a static site generator. It's not React related at all, but it doesn't have any of the server sides or any of like that stuff, but it's only a build thing. But for sure, I have for Eleventy, I have it. I just clean the whole, like on production anyway. It just cleans the whole thing. I mean, I can see here that like, so this is like .next directory is, it's hidden from version control. It's where it's like keeping a lot of its stuff, but I can already see that it had some stuff like this test too. Like this was from before I ran build ever, right? So this is from like the development server thing. So it's already keeping stuff in. So like that's just like a very, very good note to like keep in mind. And I don't know what their best practice is, but I imagine something like cleaning it automatically is probably a good call. But I just wanted to open up one of these event files just to show you, and let me see if I can format the HTML just so we can like look at it a little nicer. Maybe no. Format document HTML. Nothing. All right, never mind. But this is like if you viewed source on this page, if we published it, this is like events / 271. This is one of our meetups. And here's our HTML. That was that font things. Meta. Let me just find our H1. But here, so here's our event, and then this was the pre that I just like dumped out all of our whole JSON. So it's not very interesting to look at. But the point is, it's all here. And so if we were looking at this on Netlify, it would be the same. It would be the same file. And without having to have it do even a server side fetch call or a client side fetch call. So Next has some other cool things that like I want to dig into, and I'm going to just kind of keep pushing at this like PR, and I don't know, we'll see about scheduling one of these again if people are interested, or maybe we can just kind of carry on in Slack and the pull requests. But as far as getting features involved, I don't know, I feel like we made a I mean, I know it doesn't look like much, but I feel like we made some headway. We're kind of like going down the road. I mean, I can see all of our introduction and background. That was our first one, and that was all of our past events, and so I can see the list is all here. So
Hey, Dan.
Yep.
Have you used TypeScript with Next at all?
I have not. No, I'm sure some people have.
Okay.
What is there a specific reason why you're asking, or just?
No, I just wanted to know, like, if you were to use TypeScript, because TypeScript, that compiles separately, and then if you were trying to create a Next build, does Next already know that, oh, you're using TypeScript, so build from TypeScript and then build Next, or is that what the build process is like, if anyone knows?
Does anybody know?
I mean, I know it's a single build stage. I don't really mess with it, but Next works with TypeScript like out of the box. Just how they have all those starters, they have a TypeScript starter along with like the Tailwind one.
So I guess if you were to do like Next build, then it would figure out, oh, you're using TypeScript, and just do the two-step process for you in one step, kind of.
Yeah.
I think all you have to do is add that TS config JSON file in your project, and you can actually write the TypeScript in JS files.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at this. I found that, I mean, they have it's in their basic features as TypeScript. So like on
I'll
the
check
Next
it
site.
out.
Yeah. So, I mean, it does seem like they're just, ready for it out of the box, like as opposed to having to do any kind of funky, messing around later on. But it just looks like you can just.
We use it with TypeScript and haven't had any issues. It's not hard. It's built in. It's hard. It's actually harder to use something like Material UI with Next than it is to use TypeScript. Just the Material UI library is harder to deal with than TypeScript.
Well, there you go. Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's right there on, like, they put it front and center. So I'd be surprised if they had any of their native stuff that wasn't ready for it. I imagine they kind of are using TypeScript by default behind the scenes.
It's the only way we've ever used it too, and it's not an issue.
Yeah, nice. It's a good question.
Modules work out of the box too. We use those.
Did you say CSS modules?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. I mean, there was definitely some CSS stuff that I skipped over just because I was like, I'm just gonna try Tailwind. I know that. I mean, it's sort of another one of those like, I've only scratched the surface with Tailwind, so I just figured I'd throw it in.
I just recently started using it, and it took me like a day to just totally fall in love with it. And we used to be a total like use semantic class names, like I should be able to just like read the CSS and should feel like I'm like reading exactly what every thing is. And I'm sold on the utility library thing.
I've been hearing that from people that use it. I've never used it. Like I said, we use Material UI, and I'm not real happy with it because of just how hard it is to customize it. Away from, it's like we go so far away from the material specification that there's almost no point in using Material UI, and seeing Tailwind UI looked really interesting. I was not familiar with that.
Yeah. So I mean, Tailwind UI is cool. It is a paid like thing. Like just as a heads up. I mean, I don't mind paying for software like this, but like I don't even.
It's good inspiration.
But no, it's great, and like I mean, that wasn't like even a complaint really, but it is like I don't know, something to consider. But this is by the Tailwind developers. Like it's like a first class thing. It's not just, I think there are other UI libraries that, you know, use Tailwind that other people are making, but Tailwind UI is built by the people that are making Tailwind CSS. So it's kind of like trustworthy too, you know, in that regard. Yeah, I mean, Tailwind, I mean, I could have a whole debate about Tailwind. I go back and forth about it. It's definitely like very handy in a lot of situations. I get concerned that people are gonna, there's like things you can't do with it, you know, that you have to write CSS to do. And I don't know.
You don't
I
want
don't
to see
even,
people forget how to write CSS
oh,
because we've been
yeah,
using Tailwind for 10 years. Yeah.
right. Or even like know exact, like not exactly, but like know how it's actually working, you know, for instance. And the other thing is like, I don't know. And I'm sure this is like, there's lots of blog posts about it, but like using Tailwind across a team. I know like it has great theming and all this stuff. So you can make sure, you know, the spacing and the theming and the colors and all that are consistent. But if you can just like throw any class you want at anything all the time, then I don't know. I worry that
Inline styles all over again.
yeah, right. Yeah, inline styles and like I worry that like you're gonna just, I don't know, have a bunch of messes all over the place. And, yeah.
Does it have
Yeah,
a
I think it's important to do composition for repeated patterns, right? So there shouldn't be any like repeated set of Tailwind CSS class names used throughout the markup, right? Or if it is, it's like it's templatized, right? So you're running a for loop and just generating the same markup, but you know, then you might want to write it in line as like a set of class names. But otherwise,
Yeah.
we could like compose in our CSS files.
Oh, I'm sure that's always going to be the plan. And then somebody's like, "Oh, we just
You're right.
like added a class in this one," and you know, and
Right.
whatever.
Does it have any kind of a grid system?
Yeah. Tailwind CSS like to like I think it does. So like UI is like some nice like stuff built on top of Tailwind CSS, but I don't know. We just, I don't know.
Tailwind UI is it's essentially just code snippets, right? That are like examples of typical UI elements that you might use in like an e-commerce site or a marketing site.
Yeah. So here's like, so this is back to Tailwind UI real quick to show what we were talking about there. So this is like a live example, and the code here is like literally just markup with all Tailwind CSS classes. And then they have in situations where there's going to be, let's see if I can find it.
It's a lot of classes.
Yeah, no, it's real ugly. Like, I mean, it's really hard to get used to looking at. I imagine that, you know, it would happen, you know, if you use it enough. I know very talented developers that swear by it, you know, so I'm like, I try to remember that. But so this is in the Tailwind UI component library, like examples, they'll show you what the like different state classes are too in here, which is cool. Maybe that's what the grid system is. Oh, Command K. See, I'm learning. Grid. Oh, this is CSS Grid.
Yeah, I guess when I said grid, I didn't specify. Like Material UI uses a flexbox based
right. No,
system,
yeah,
but
I know exactly what you meant when
Out of
you
12 fractions, so it's like 1 out of 12, 2 out of 12, 3 out of 12. I don't know.
Yeah, I was pretty sure there was something like that, and I was trying to find it.
you mean fractions like as an actual CSS grid?
No, well, I mean, you just add a class name that's like 6 divided by 12, and that's like a half width column.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Flex.
I haven't played with the grid stuff yet.
Grid.
If you go down to layout on that other page you were on, Dan, it says grid is coming soon. If you're talking about layout grid, not like AG grid, but like layout grid.
Yeah, I'm talking about a layout grid. You know, something that you could say at my smallest breakpoint, this is going to be 12 columns wide, full width. At my medium breakpoint, it's going to be 6, and at my large, it's going to be, you know, whatever.
I don't even want to know what that is. Yeah, no, like I just know that there is something like that in here, and I do not remember.
It might just be the widths. I think that's where the 6 out of 12 thing is in the sizing widths. I don't know how you get it to start in a particular column.
Yeah,
there is a grid There is a grid class though, I think. And
Yeah,
then
width is
there's a way
just
to
like
specify.
There's a ton of
the grid class is like from what I mean we're just like talking about but so the grid, well, let's just get into this grid section here. So I don't know. Grid.
That's CSS Grid, right?
Yeah, that's
Right,
CSS Grid
right,
because
right,
it's
right.
got fractions.
Yeah, so I don't think that they have an actual like grid framework within Tailwind CSS.
Yeah.
I don't know
Okay,
if
I
their
see what you guys-
recommendation would be to use, their Flexbox classes and then combine that with, width classes and
Yeah.
so on and so forth to kind of build up that manually. I don't think they have one out of the box to say like, this is a column of this. And
Yeah.
it's
So
pre-
all right. Yeah. So grid, I mean, there's a grid class name and then it just says display grid, right? So I think what happens is what they would want you to do is mix that with, so they have responsive classes, which are cool. So you can do medium and then whatever class, right? And so I would probably just match that with either flex or actual grid and say grid template columns, right? So like so you could say here's responsive. All right, so here's grid columns 1 is like the default, and then at medium grid column 6, right? So this is saying, at the beginning just 1 column, and then when we get to the medium breakpoint 6 columns. That's like,
yeah, I see it. I get it.
that's, and you can customize what the breakpoints are and all that stuff. But this is grid columns 3 means just 3 columns across, one FR
Across whatever your width is.
Yeah. So I don't know. And like that's it. So Tailwind has a lot of different ways to do stuff, and it's kind of cool. I don't know. But
it's extremely atomic, right? Like every class does like exactly one thing. So you learn how to combine things to do more complicated things. It's like a Lego set.
Almost like CSS.
Yeah, it's like barely an abstraction of CSS.
All right. I try really hard not to crap all over Tailwind because I haven't used it enough to really have a good
like I said, I've heard a lot of people like it. But I like you, I haven't, I've never used it. It's just one of those things that's never come up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I haven't used it seriously, and so this was another reason why, like, this was just like, okay, let's just try it out here. You know what I mean? Experiment on all of you. So
the responsive utilities alone are pretty nice, right? Because you could just be like small, medium, large, XL, whatever. And you can set your own breakpoints, I think, too.
Yeah, you can add some and you can customize them and all that stuff for sure. And you can actually even change, like, so this there by default goes up to 12 or whatever, but you can you like, they showed this in here. You can say, like, you can add, okay, I want a 16 one, and actually you can do things. So like this, so every time I start talking about grid, then I'm like, well, there's all this stuff that, grid can do that you can't just do, but like, you can actually come in here and add them. And this doesn't have to be 16 and just equal, you can make some funky, or here, footer. Yeah, this is a really good example. So footer, and this is 200 pixels. This is like this is a 3 column grid, 200 and then fancy and then 100, and so how you would use that in your HTML is instead of grid dash whatever it is, what did they say, grid dash template column. So this would say grid calls footer instead of 12 or whatever. But you have to you have to hardline that in. I don't know. Tailwind's got a lot of cool stuff, and they've thought about a lot of this stuff for sure.
Tailwind makes me want like a VS Code extension that collapses HTML attributes. You know how you can like collapse functions? I want to collapse the class name attribute.
Yeah. No, just now you got me thinking about that for sure. I mean, well, like VS Code. So like anything that's indented, you could do it, right? So if you just started making them like this instead, whatever, I think that this will work. Yeah, you can do
That's
that.
a whole new can of worms of like moonlighting class names, though.
I don't know. It's a mess. We're going to we're going down the deep end now.
With, if you wanted to build a component, let's say with multiple themes or variants that had essentially maybe the same functionality, but with maybe completely different styling, would that be something that you could do easily, or would you end up with a bunch of if statements within the class names throughout like every element within the component? If you were doing something with regular CSS, you could put a modifier class on the entire, or like the top parent element, and then through cascading effect, apply the styles to individual elements within that component.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great question. That's the big difference between, I mean, well, not the big difference, right? But that is one like strong differentiator, is that you're never like, there's no cascade anymore. You know, like you're never basing things based on whatever the parent is or anything like that. So, you know, you're just gonna have to handle it.
You can still write regular CSS on top of your Tailwind. You know, like if you need to do something that Tailwind can't do for you, like you can do a combination of writing either custom CSS, or you can compose classes with utility classes. So they have this apply directive where you can just say add apply and then list off all the utility classes you need. And then that just becomes a regular CSS class name that you can use in your markup. And you could cascade those things together to create variants of the bigger, more complicated component like you described.
Yeah, you definitely can, and that also sounds messy to me, but probably solves a lot of problems. The way that I would do that, the way that I would like solve it, you know, the like original question, Matt, would be like to, instead of letting CSS do it, you know, we would have a switch here. Let me just see if I can, I don't know if I can come up with a good example, but all right. So if we have upcoming and past, right? And so like, if I was doing some sort of traditional CSS, this would be like you know, upcoming list, right? And this would be past list. And then our li would be like chain, you know, so it'd be like upcoming list li would have different styles than past list li, right? You know, in the CSS. So like whatever I called it. And this would be, you know, whatever it is. And this is, and then past is, you know, different, right? And this is background is red, right? And instead of doing that, like instead of really ever talking to the parent element, I'm just going to be adding, you know, things directly to the LIs here. So this would just be like, you know, green and BG red. So leaving much less up to the CSS itself, as far as like choices. That's kind of like the Tailwind utility class approach. Is,
but you could also create the UL there as a separate component, so you have the same markup, but then you would have to figure out how to use, you know, if statements within the class name to change that background on that based on the modifier that you pass to that component.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So for sure, yeah. So whatever you know, you could say, whatever, are we upcoming? You know, I mean, like this doesn't exist, then BG red, or, you know, like that too, right? That'd be the other way to approach it. And then,
or if you needed a wide arching effect, you could just use one class name and then nest your styles underneath that to, or never mind, sorry. You would have to still connect all the dots in your CSS, so it wouldn't really help.
Right. I mean, there's definitely different ways to approach it. They have some suggestions, I think, for React. I don't know if it's here or not. Tailwind UI has some like pointers about on their one page of documentation. Oh, they're just like, remember to change class to class name. Let me see what here. All right, so this is the HTML from them, and here's their implementation of it, right? So they're just doing a ternary right inside the class. Except they forgot this one. I want my money back. But so, you can see here, they have this huge list of class names here, and they're just like putting a switch on just one of them, you know? And then the
I
other
definitely
7,000
find
class
myself
names.
toggling between word wrap and my editor whenever I'm writing these lists of tailwind class names.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. It is what it is. All right, well, cool. Well, it's 9:30. We got some people jumping off, and I think I'm going to also go try to relax a little bit. But thank you everybody for hanging out. Do any final questions or concerns or anything like that before we wrap up?
I have one.
Yes.
When you've got a static site like this, can it run without JS enabled in the browser?
I believe so, yeah. I mean,
That's cool.
it'll load,
Yeah.
Some of it will
Assuming there's
depend.
no interactivity. Yeah.
Right, no interactivity, and some of the CSS questions will depend on what you did. I think on our setup it will generate CSS, but if it's if you're getting into like deep into style components and stuff like that, you're gonna run into those styles like possibly not being applied, things like that, but like if we did our build, I could probably see it, but in our build it actually built I think it either built or probably inlined the CSS. Maybe. I thought I saw it there somewhere. Style sheet. I don't know if that's the. Let's see here. Link. Link. Preload. Oh yeah, next static here. Yeah, here it is. Wherever that is. Anyway, I think if you're using CSS, probably CSS modules as well, it will actually create CSS files for you and like link them properly in HTML, But if you have dynamic stuff that's loading, then that won't load if you turn off JavaScript. But, yeah, it's a good question though.
Awesome. Thanks for hosting, Dan.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for coming again. I don't know, keep an eye out. I might just sort of randomly schedule another one of these ongoing. I think next month Cameron is going to do an event on React Query, I believe.
React Query, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll get that scheduled. So keep an eye out for that too. I'm excited about that. React Query is a really nice hook for making queries to APIs. Yeah, I guess if nothing else, I'll see you everybody pretty soon. And have a good night.
Cheers, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.
Take care.
Good night.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.